love from my youth to this very day have always found a very soft spot in my heart. When it comes to the Holy Spirit, salvation, things of the nature of His Spirit. Today, as you can see, my topic will be born again. Can you help me say that? Born again. Born again. A second time this year, I'm going into this topic of salvation. What does it truly mean to be in His set apartness? His salvation, what does it mean to be born again? Mara Shamika, you wasn't here. The family wasn't here the last time I went into this. But it was at the question in Midrash, so what does it truly mean to be born again or to have salvation? And so the last time I taught was on salvation. Today I'm going into another phase of it, or another phrase of it, which is to be born again. My aim is to cover as much as I can while I'm here in this topic of being born again. Going back 2 years, 2020, when I really went into this for about probably 6 months. And I went all the way back to the time of the Pentecostal movement, Pentecostalism, they called it, where they came up with their own way of Pentecost. By teaching, speaking in tongue, colleges came up out of it, and they began to really move about in what they call the giving of the Holy Spirit, going back to the late 1880s, really became very well known in 1906 when the Azusa Street move came about. And the Azusa Street movement came out of the desire of teaching people how to uniformly speak in tongues of angels, speak in the Holy Spirit. And so by the colleges and the schools that came out of this, Kansas and different places of California began to spread the message of Pentecostalism. But it didn't stop there. To today, where they are now, in the 1900s, 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2020, it is still a major topic of salvation. And so I wanted to give just a little bit to go back a couple of years, because I'm not really going back to what I taught on. I went in depth for about 6 months. I went back to see when I taught and how long I taught in this subject matter. And this was the time that I spoke about the different mega church teachers such as Eddie Long, Creflo Dollar, Paula White, what is the other lady's name? Joyce Myers, thank you from the Zoom room. So you see where I'm at. We're talking about different ones that have taken us into the charismatic move. And from the charisma, we have charismatic teachers who have now benefit greatly with their jets and their arenas. The arenas are just a greater capacity than the churches. So when you go into the arenas, you're talking about thousands upon thousands that fill up the arenas. So you have mega churches that have now gone into 35,000 and 40,000 membership as they would boast. Not that they all would be there at the same time. Matter of fact, the wife and I saw the Potter's house, and he was preaching his heart out. And I don't think they meant for us to see the audience. The audience could be counted very easily. They were so scattered. You had a person here, a person over there, a person over here. They would have to actually get up and walk out of their seating area to find somebody to hug and say, "Amen, neighbor." Now, I wouldn't say that's every Sunday, but I would say that COVID had a lot to do with what we are seeing. And COVID has brought down the church. The church has now moved out of the path that we need to be on. So, let's talk about being born again. What does it mean to be born again? So, as I borrow your listening ear, I want to take you back to what is probably one of the greatest references that we know of, whether you're church, you're Hebrew, it doesn't matter. At some point, we all have heard this message. So we're going to go to John chapter 3. We're going to look at verses 1 through 7. You must be born again. Everyone say, you must be born again. And that's going to be our topic. Although near the close, it's not going to seem like I'm still on my topic. I'm going to kind of take a left turn and go back. But I wanted to at least start out here so that you know, by the time I'm closing today, in the next 2-3 hours, I'm just kidding. We started on time today. But I'm going to show you how it connects. All right, so John chapter 3, verse 1 through 7. And there was a man of the Pharisees, Nakdimon was his name, a ruler of the Yehudim, Jews, Yehudi. This one came to Yahshuah by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from Elohim, for no one is able to do these signs you do if Elohim is not with him. Yahshuah answered, said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born from above, he is unable to see the reign of Elohim. Nakdimon said to him, how is a man able to be born when he is old? Is he able to enter his mother's womb a second time and be born? Yahshua answered, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he is unable to enter into the reign of Elohim. So he mentions the reign of Elohim a second time here. So truth is being established. Something about the reign of Elohim. That which has been born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of spirit is spirit. Do not marvel that I said to you, you must be born from above. So in other words, there is something about being born from above in the reign of Elohim, the reign of Yahweh. So this reign that is heavenly must have something to do with earthly born again. So as I try to shape this and bring this out, the question that this great teacher, this ruler of the Yehudim, who was, we read it as ruler, but that means also judge. So this is a man full of wisdom. He's able to judge from the Torah. Remember, going back to Moshe, he was advised to bring in others who would also help rightly divide the word of truth. And they divided it up among thousands, hundreds, fifties, tens. The greater matters come to you, Moshe. So we remember that. But what was his thought? What he was able to bring, a man who was full of wisdom, full of Torah, because truly that's what they judge people by, the Torah. So his mind was like a computer. But the best he can do was to be born again. Should we go back into our mother's womb and be born a second time? How can this be? Now, Yahshua is going to really bring a major point out when he says, unless one is born of water and the Spirit. So I need for you to bookmark that. Born of water and Spirit. So we are building a case. So to be born again is not to go back into our mother's womb when we are up in age. First of all, we have outgrown the womb, because as a baby is developing, they develop until they can no longer stay there. And then the natural process, I just used that, but Yahweh's process is to give deliverance, to deliver the baby born again a second time. So what does Yahshua come up with? He is unable to enter into the reign of Elohim. That which is born of flesh is flesh. So we have flesh. That's one thing. And that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. So now we have two things. We have flesh and then we have spirit. And so, to be born of the flesh is flesh. To be born again, we now must also be born of the Spirit. So, born again. Just in the title, it tells us something about birth. Born. Now, again, a second time. To be born again, to have salvation. Going back a couple of years, I think we resolved that in order to have salvation, to look at the root of salvation, we came to the conclusion of to be saved from something. So if there is danger, what do you want? To be saved from danger. So we've also looked at, in my last teaching, what does it really mean to be born again? Is to be saved from our sin. This is the purpose that Yahshua came, that he would save his people from what? Their sins. And so this is the purpose that Yahshua was born for, spoken of back in Genesis. This is the oath and the promise when he spoke to the three in the garden. You know who was there, the man, the woman, and Hasatan. And it was promised that one would be born that would destroy the head, crush the head of the serpent. Now, as we watch this play out, you have to be born from above. So what is this spirit that is above? Well, right away we know that Yahweh. So he wants us to be born again of what? His spirit? Yes. This is what was preserved in heaven, and it could not be corrupted. And I'm going to move on with this so that we can further examine. What I want you to do, I want you to help me keep up with where we are. I'm going to give you the easy part. I want you to read book, chapter, verse, and the title. So let's begin now. John chapter 3, verse 12 through 17. Just believe and obey. Okay, so just believe and obey. This is where we are, and we're still finishing John chapter 3. If you do not believe when I spoke to you about earthly matters, how are you going to believe when I speak to you about the heavenly matters? And no one has gone up into the heaven except he who came down from the heaven, the son of Adam. And as Moshe lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the son of Adam has to be lifted up, so that whoever is believing in him should not perish, but possess everlasting life. For Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only brought forth Son, so that everyone who believes in him should not perish, but possess everlasting life. For Elohim did not send his Son into the world to judge the world, but that the world through him might be saved. So to be born again, we have already concluded. I've done this in my last teaching, so I'm not going to go back there, but I want to remind you that I've already concluded that Yeshua's purpose, one of his purposes, is that he would save his people from what? Their sin. So looking at the Brit or the New Testament, it agrees and line up that the world through him might be saved. So to have salvation is to be saved from something. I want to remind you of something I went through a couple of years back when I was talking about salvation, and I stripped it down to its bare root, its essence. And I talked about to be saved, and I had a little circle with a number of things that we can ascertain from being saved. It's not just a religious thought. It is a natural thought. So if I tell you of earthly things and you don't understand, how can I tell you of spiritual things? How are you going to understand? So now, and it's not that we can't understand, is that he wants us to understand. So these are his codes out to us. Look and understand. Earthly is fleshly. Heavenly is spiritual. So we must wrap them up and begin to learn how they go together. So I need for us to begin to channel our thoughts, keeping them separated, but the understanding that we need them both housed within one's being in order to be saved. From what is up above, we must be saved by the Spirit that comes down from heaven, the Spirit of Elohim. We must be born again. Why? Let me go ahead and answer that question. Because we were born of our earthly father, born in sin, shaped in iniquity. So therefore now we must be born again of our heavenly Father, who overrides our need for fleshly pleasures. So, just believe and obey. If you do not believe when I spoke to you about earthly matters, how are you going to believe when I speak to you about heavenly matters? So as we look at this, we have two things we must divide salvation into. First, fleshly beings who need to be born again of heavenly spirit, his salvation. And so he has devised a way that we can be saved, even though we were born of the flesh. Because one thing James goes into, and I'm not going to get too much into James today. I'll have one slide for you in James, kind of an introduction. But I won't finish this today, so you already know I'm going to still be working on salvation, being born again. So next time you hear me speaking, that's where I'll be. But James goes into what leads to our flesh is desire. And once desire has been fulfilled, it leads to sin. And once sin has been fulfilled, it leads to what? Death. Okay, so y'all see me. All right, so let's look at the next piece I want to bring out. The flesh is our nature. And Yahweh helped me with this. Here is Moshe lifting up the serpent in the wilderness, and I'll get there in a moment. But I want to give you just a peek of it while we're here in the New Testament or the Brit. But keep in mind that Moshe had to make a serpent. It was made of bronze. And as this serpent was crafted by Moshe, he put it on a pole. And as he put it on the pole, all we had to do is look at it, and we would be saved. So I'm going to leave that for now because I'm going into it a little more as I come into when I hit my curve and I'm coming in my conclusion, you're going to think, okay, he's left where he's been talking about being born again. Trust me, I'm never really going to leave where I'm at. But I want you to just know I have to make a turn in the teaching, and I'm going to take you along with me. Okay, there we go. Here's the next one. Can you read for me? And that is Peter, 1 Peter. All together. Verse 9. If I am lifted. So let's talk about being lifted. Now, we've already introduced the serpent, right? So we know that it has something to do with a serpent being lifted. And we know that fire was on that serpent. Being born again. Today is my topic. I need to remind you of that because in a few minutes, when I get through with my Brit, y'all gonna know I'm gonna take a left turn. So here's 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 through 5. Blessed be the Elohim and Father of our Master, Yahshua Messiah, who according to his great compassion has caused us to be born again to a living expectation through the resurrection of Yahshua Messiah from the dead to the inheritance incorruptible and undefiled, unfading, having been kept in heavens for you, who are protected by the power of Elohim through belief, for a deliverance ready to be revealed in the last time. Verse 9. I skipped all the way down to the last, or not the last, but verse 9. Obtaining the goal of your belief, a deliverance of lives. So I'm still with the scriptures here, Brit, New Testament, and I'm allowing the scriptures to define to be born again for us. So through belief, we obtain the goal. What is the goal? The goal of our belief is deliverance. What do you want to be delivered from? Whether it's sickness, you go to a hospital. If you stump your toe and it hurts, you go to mom or dad. They'll help you. You want to be delivered. If you are pregnant and you are in your 9th month and your water has broken and you are in pain, what do you know is happening? Deliverance. So to be born again is not just a spiritual application, but we have to also recognize that it is an application that must be applied to the physical. And what is the physical? That we are born of our parents. born in sin, shaped in iniquity. So therefore, we need to be what? Born again. So after we have come into the world, into existence. See, to come into existence is beyond just the birthing process. It's also the conception is coming into existence. At the conception of a child in weeks, but we have been convinced that they are not a child until they break the birthing canal. That's wrong. A child from the seed is a child, just not manifested yet. It has not gone through the process. And trust me, when I say process, I'm kind of in deep on the process. Although I'm going to keep it very surface for us today. But this process, if you talk to a mother who's been pregnant, she can take you through her process of giving birth to her child. It wasn't when she felt the first pain. It wasn't when she began to notice changes of her body. But it began to take shape within her womb and was hidden for a time until she herself, it was revealed to her, either by herself or someone else who knows the signs. Another woman can look at a woman and say, "You're pregnant." She begins to ready her body for the birth before it even takes place. She takes on weight. And all portions of her body begin to grow because something is growing on the inside. Milk duds. Everything. Milk ducts. Ducks. See? Some things we need women for, brothers. They help us stay straight on those parts. See, I would have had milk duds, you know. But I heard my wife say milk. Say it again. Milk ducts. I'm scared to say it because I still might mess it up. But y'all know what I'm talking about. And I'm staying away from going to certain things, but it's the process that a woman knows when a mother sees her daughter begin to take change. She began to take notice. Daughter, come here. She began to touch. She only suspect, but she began to just to inspect. And she's like, "Are you pregnant?" "No, Ma." But a few weeks later, like, "Ma, I'm pregnant." But Mama saw it because she knows what? The signs. She's been through it. All right, so Yahshuah says, "If I'm lifted, I'll draw all men unto me." That's John chapter 12. I didn't put that here, but we're familiar with that one. And so why does Yahshuah put it on such terms of the past? We must be born again. Why does he go all the way back to the wilderness when they were coming out of Mizraim, when Moshe was commanded by Yahweh to craft a serpent and put it on a pole? Now, I need to very briefly take your mind back to the burning bush. But I'm not going to stay there because I need to just mention it to show you how all of these things are together, and it's from heaven. We must be born from above. So if your mind now is with Moshe at the bush before he even brought the children of Israel out of Mizraim, he's at this burning bush, and it begins to speak. So keep your thoughts on inanimate things speaking, or something from nature, as they would call it, speaking. So first, let's look at this burning bush, and we know Yahweh asked him, what is that in your hand? And like I said, I'm going to keep this real brief. So I need you to keep your mind on where I'm at so I can just kind of get back where I need to be. But remember the rod? What did he do with the rod? He threw it down, right? And when he threw it down, what did it become? A snake, a serpent, right? And what did he tell him to do? Pick it up. What did it turn back to? A rod again. Okay, I'm moving forward. There's a lot there, but I'm going to go back to where I was. So, now, we have this serpent on a pole again. But this time, there's a difference. It's on fire. It's burning. And everyone who looks at it shall live. So, I'm going to get to something when I get to Numbers chapter 21. That's in my left turn. When I get there, you're going to see why I mention these things. Because it's relevant to being born again. Because something happened along our travels to get us off the path. And many of us are still in the wrong path. And so as we are now crying out to others, come to the narrow path, you'll see what I mean in just a few minutes here. So let me go to James and further define belief. So now I'm coming a little bit closer to where I'm trying to get you. There's something you need in order to be born again. You need belief. Now, you've heard me already read this, mention this, not this verse here, and of course, I've done it in the past. I used this when I talked about salvation 2 years ago in 2020. I used it the last time. And so I'm using it again. And so I'm bringing into focus, you know how when you take a camera and you keep turning it, you see the image, but it may not be in focus yet. But you have to keep turning these. Of course, this is the old ones. The new ones now, they just kind of automatically turn until they get you in focus. But we're bringing the image closer to focus. So let's define belief and look at it from the aspect of flesh or spirit. So let's read this first, James chapter 2, verse 14 through 19. My brothers, what use is it for anyone to say he has belief but does not have works? This belief is unable to save him. If a brother or sister is naked and in need of daily food, but one of you say to them, go in peace, be warm, and be filled. But you did not give them the bodily needs. What use is it? So let's address that first. Let's address that question. So the natural part is the person is hungry. You can't give him spiritual food and expect him to be filled. That's spiritual. What do we need to do? If a person needs food, you should do what? Give him food. That serves the what? The body. Now you can give him spiritual food. He can hear you a little bit better when his stomach is not overriding your words with their growls. I'm really hungry, and you giving me spiritual food. I'm starving, but you want to give me spiritual food. Give them physical food first. So what are we talking about? We're talking about earthly things, flesh. Then we can get to heavenly, spiritual things. If I talk to you of fleshly things and you don't understand, how can I talk to you concerning spiritual things? So he did break it down for us. He didn't leave us hanging. So right here, his fleshly brother, his half-brother, explains it even more by explaining with this example, and I'm going to go back. And if a brother or a sister is naked and in need of daily food, but one of you say to them, go in peace and be warmed and be filled, but you do not give them the bodily needs, physical, flesh. But some might say, you have belief and I have works. Show me your belief without works, and I'll show you my belief by my works. You believe that Elohim is one. The demons also believe and shudder. So as we look at James, Yaakov, and he gives us this phenomenal explanation concerning the flesh and the spirit, helping us to understand and put in perspective flesh and spirit. We need to be born from above. Who is above? Yahweh, the Holy Spirit, the King of Kings. He sent his Son that we might be saved from our sins. So this powerful message that he lays at our feet here, you have belief and I have works. All right. Show me your belief without works, and I'll show you my belief by my works. So belief is not enough. Belief by itself is not enough. So if a person is hungry and you believe that they would be filled, you can tell them, be filled. If they're naked, you can say, be clothed and be warm. That's your belief. But they need something more right now. They need their flesh to be warm, their stomach to be filled. So you can't give them your spiritual belief and expect for them to be warmed and filled. Because one is natural, the other is spiritual. But yes, we need them both fused inside one house. But right now, this brother is hungry. His natural being needs to be filled. He is naked. He needs to be clothed. So at the bottom here, this is not a part of the scriptures. I wanted to make sure that I moved it far enough away that you did not believe this is part of what the scriptures have written. But this comes from the scriptures. It is a definition modified by me out of the back of the scriptures. In the back of our scriptures, scriptures 1998 and 2009 have all of these wonderful definitions. This is one. It says, to believe is to trust, to rely on, and even to prove your belief by what? Obedience. So that should remind you of something. Obedience is better than sacrifices. So when Yahshua said, if I am lifted, I will draw all men unto me. Do you believe that? So he's calling us to the same event taking place in the wilderness where Yahweh sent serpents. And I'm getting ahead a little bit. I'll be there when I get to Numbers, which is next. So let me go ahead and go there. So let's keep this, bookmark this also. Your belief. How do you prove what you believe? By your obedience. Demons believe. And they tremble. So belief is not enough. We know they're demons. They're spiritual. Their nature is not of Yahweh. They were created by Yahweh, but went off the path. So how do you prove what you believe? And this is where the process that is very deep, just like a baby that is 1 week old, 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, 1 month old, cannot process what you know and understand. Why? They haven't been born yet. They haven't gone through the full process of birthing. And even when they are born, we have a couple of babies in the house, and I don't know, I think we have 2 and 3. 3 and 3, correct me? 3? Okay, so we have 3 and 3. They still can't. They can't, first of all, communicate what they believe, because the language for them is relied on their parents. So let me take them back 3 years at birth. Do you think that they had enough knowledge at birth to make a choice to be saved or not? They didn't. So now if they didn't have enough knowledge to make a decision of a spiritual matter, because they was born of what? The flesh and of earthly desires, right? Daddy saw mama. I'm not going to take it all away, but I need y'all to just stay with me really quick. That was a flyby. Let me give a little more. Daddy saw mama and she was a twinkle. Well, you became a twinkle in his eye. I think y'all got it now. All right, so I love that look that Ephraim just gave me. It was like, so I'm going to leave. That was priceless. That was priceless. I mean, that was like, so, yes, that's where I'm at, Ephraim. You're 16. And if you had to give me that look, can you imagine a baby just born They don't have the capacity to make a choice. Do I want this spiritual thing? Do I want this fleshly thing? They have no concept of it. I hope y'all see what I'm doing. I'm trying to keep flesh in the flesh and spiritual in the spiritual. You can't be born again unless you have been born from above. So we need to bring down what is above to us. And none of us have gone up to bring it down except for the one who is already up. The son of Adam. We already read it. So I hope you are staying with me, because I'm doing this intentionally. I'm saying things, I'm reading things, and I'm hoping that they're kind of impressed in your mind, so as I go back to what I've already read, that you're following my little map. So now, he is the one, let me make it easy. He's the one who brings down the spiritual inheritance that was kept in heaven, and it was incorruptible. Can y'all see that part right there? That nobody on earth can corrupt that spiritual inheritance that was kept by Yahweh. Impossible. It wasn't here. But in order to be here, someone had to die, go and bring it. All right, so let me continue on. So now that we have this obedience proving our belief, how do you prove your belief? In order to prove what you believe, you must do what you believe. In order to do what you believe calls for obedience. Numbers chapter 21, verse 4 through 8. Look and live. Here's my left turn. Numbers chapter 21. And they departed from Mount Hor by the way of the Sea of Reeds to go around the land of Edom. But the being of the people grew impatient because of the way. And the people spoke against Elohim and against Moshe. So when he says in the people, you know he's talking about Israel, those he called out, right? Why have you brought us up out of Mizraim to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and our being loathed this light bread. And Yahweh sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people. And many of the people of Israel died. Then the people came to Moshe and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against Yahweh and against you. The you is Moshe. Pray to Yahweh to take away the serpent from us. So Moshe prayed on behalf of the people, and Yahweh said to Moshe, make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole. And it shall be that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live. So if a person is bitten, he shall live. Now, generally, when we think about snakes, We think about snakes crawling on their belly. So we think that snakes would be down on the ground around our feet. And if the snakes are down around our feet, first of all, let's address they were hungry and thirsty. They didn't want that light bread. Yahshuah said what? I am the bread of life. They didn't want the light bread. Yahshuah said, I am the light of the world. They didn't want the light bread. So what did Yahweh say to Moshe? Make a serpent. Well, they already got plenty of serpents. Why would Yahweh tell him to make a serpent? And does that really go into making of idols? To make something of heaven or the earth? Well, look what Yahweh does with this. Make a fiery serpent, or he sent fiery serpents, and what did those serpents do? They bit the people. And what happened? The people did what? Died. So in addressing this and Yahweh's instructions to Moshe is, make a serpent of bronze, put it on a pole. So whoever's bitten, when they are bitten, look at it. You know, I actually had to go back and make sure that it didn't say when they look up. I didn't see that. What I saw, when they look at it. So you didn't need someone to hold it up. You just needed to look at it, wherever it was. Wherever that serpent sits on this pole, on fire. So a quick thought for that is that, first of all, Yahweh is giving us a sign and wonder. First of all, anyone who followed the instructions would do what? Live. So if you are bitten, look at the serpent and live. Yahshua says, if I'm lifted, I will do what? Draw all men. Belief, right? So do we believe that? So now there is belief involved in what he's telling us to do. So my topic once again is what? Born again. We're born, but he's telling us to be born again, a second time, to be born of his spirit, that which come down from heaven. And one way we can do that is eat the spiritual bread. Somebody say, eat the bread. Eat the bread. Come on and say it like you mean it. Eat the bread. So we must do what? At Passover, do what? Eat the bread. If you're hungry, eat the bread. He is the light of the world. Look and live. He is the light of the world. But there's something different about this serpent. There's a deeper sign here. And this concept of these children who are born out of Mizraim, he's giving us the signs and wonders. Let me go back to our babies who are 3 years old and take them further back to the time and before their birth. Let's go back to a time 2 to 3 months. But they were still coming, right? They were still to be born in the appointed time. But it was a process that they must go through hidden to be born. But we all now can see what process they went through to be born. We all know that they went through development or developmental stages so that they can live outside the womb. But the mother's body was prepared. But even in the mother's knowledge, when she found out she was pregnant, she couldn't relate to the baby that you need to be born again. The baby couldn't process that. So I'm keeping us back there for a reason, because that which is flesh is what? That which is spirit is what? So we need to know that that baby in the first week of gestation, the second week, the third week, the fourth week, fifth week, the 10th week, the 20th week, the 30th week, the 36th week, even the 40th week could not be. You couldn't say to them, child, you must be born again. I know you're getting ready to be born, but you got to be born again. But that is the reality, because once we are born of the flesh, we need to be born of the what? That which is flesh is, that which is spirit is. Y'all moving a little slow on those answers, even though you know them, so I'm going to take you back around again. Because you know this part now. I've been prompting you and kind of bring you into the knowledge of where I'm at. And we are really in some deep waters. But what I'm doing is trying to keep it surface. I need to know that you're still with me. That which is flesh is, that which is spirit is. So a baby could not be. You can't expect them to know what it means to go through the process of being born again. They have to be born the first time. And so once they are born, they're still now going through a process. And all the way up until my grandson, Ephraim here, when he gave me that special look, Papa, what are you talking about? We're still trying to help them go through what? The process of understanding what it means to be born again. But you don't have to go through a process to know that there's danger when a baby who is just born is in face of danger. What will they do? Begin to cry. I need to be saved, Mama, Daddy. You put something dangerous in front of a baby who can't talk, they will begin to cry out. I'm going back a couple of years, my old teaching on this. If a baby needs help, what will they do? They will cry. They don't have the language yet. If the baby's diaper is wet, what will the baby do? Cry out. It is a sign to you, Mama, I need help. So I'm keeping the flesh with the flesh and the spiritual with the spiritual. But now, when a child begins to ask, what do I need to do in order to be saved? They have come to a stage of birthing that they know they need to be born again because they have been with mom and dad, and they've been hearing this. Whatever path you're on, they've been hearing this because they've been really talking about it on the wide road as well. They've been talking about it on the narrow path as well. So wherever you are, in your process, wherever you come to the conclusion that I need to be born again, it can happen because we need to be born from above. And still, they need to be nurtured. So when a daughter says, what do I need to do to be born again? A son needs, no, I need to be born again. The spiritual is spiritual, but the natural is natural. And we can't just give them the natural without the spiritual, because it must be born from above. And we must bring it down for them that they understand. Whereas Yahshuah, he brought it down for us to help us to understand. Okay, so the last bullet, the people came to Moshe and said, we have sinned. So here's a process for belief. When you believe, you repent, and then you obey in that order. So when a baby gets to the point of belief and repentance and obedience, let me ask this question. Where is a child firstly taught obedience? Let's go back to our babies. They're taught obedience from their parents, right? That's their first lesson. So now we must connect that to your obedience to my word is good for you. You won't get a beating. Beat them and they will not what? Will not die. Now that's different from what they're saying today. That's capital punishment. We're going to come and arrest you if we find out you're beating your children. Children, call 911. If your parents beat you, we'll come and get them. We're your friends. Basically, what they want is they want you on the wide path. I used to hear my grandparents, my grandmother in particular, say I was glad for beatings. I couldn't agree with her. I was never glad for beatings. But now as an adult, I understand what my father was doing for me. He didn't understand righteousness, but he understand my right hand on your butt. He understood. So when I got out of order, he was able to put me back in order. It was the process. The process. So we must go through the process. It's painful, but it works. It's painful, but it works. It's painful, but it works. I need to be saved from something. To be saved is to be saved from what? Danger. If I tell you of earthly things, how would you understand? If I tell you of earthly things and you don't understand, how can I tell you of heavenly things and you will understand? So this is why we're going through this, so that we can understand. So I love the confirmation that I got from my grandson, Ephraim. I'm not picking on you, Ephraim, but I love that look you gave me. That was all the confirmation that I needed. Because what you sealed for me was children who were not able to understand what you understand. But you looked at me with such a thought in your mind. I can see your mind thinking. And that's what I loved. I love your thoughts. I love how you calculate. And in your mind, what I know is Torah. So what you do is you match everything up against the Torah. When you're thinking, where is this in the Torah? What is it about the Torah? What am I inside the Torah? Am I not inside the Torah? My mom and dad taught me obedience. Now I need to know obedience to my spiritual father as well. So that which is spiritual, but they're teaching you natural. So you learn the natural first. At least you learn the natural first. Right? If you got out of line, mom and dad corrected you, right? And that was for your good. And so now you can start thinking about what does it mean to be spiritual when you have learned what is natural. If you're hungry, you need to be fed. If you're naked, you need to be clothed. So I think we got that. So I can move on. So these fiery serpents, was that really mean of Yahweh? They were hungry. Yahweh sent them serpents. They were thirsty. They bit them. Was that mean of Yahweh? Wow. Wow. Or was he giving us a message? Because what has happened now is they talked against Yahweh in order to get these serpents. So let's figure out, why did Yahweh send in these serpents on them? Let's see if he is this mean law-giving God that we've been hearing about. I hope I'm never hungry and thirsty and he's sending serpents to bite me. But we need to understand that, and our babies need to understand that. Layla, you need to understand that, right? But right now, you just really have to rely on mom and dad to help you with the natural things, and the spiritual things will grow on you. Dominique, you hear what I'm saying? The spiritual things will grow. But first you need to know, do I want to be born again? For our youth, do I want to be born again? You have to take it serious, because we were taken on a different path. Micah, we were taken on a different path. And that path was the wide path. I'm going to get there, but I want to lead you into it. So when you find yourself on the wide path, it's all spiritual. We must tremble at his name. That's not enough. Well, I believe. What do you really believe? Is it enough that you are obedient? I'm dissecting. I'm dissecting what it means to be born again. All right, so let's move on. So before I leave, let me go back. Before I leave these serpents, we know that at Mount Hor is where Aaron died, right? There was a change of guard there. We have Eleazar now becoming the high priest, and they couldn't go in by Edom. They got to the promised land, and Edom was the border, and they couldn't go in by Edom because Edom said, if you come this way, we'll do what? Come out against you. They had 40 years out in the wilderness fighting battles, going through events. And these people are now here by me. That's what's coming next. So they begin to talk against Moshe and Yahweh. Why? Because you're taking us all around the world. We've been out here for 40 years, Moshe. When are you going to give us deliverance, the process? When are we going into the land? Well, you know we can't go in by Edom. They're not going to let us come in. They're going to fight us. So they had to go around about another way. They still got into a war, but not with Edom. Who was Edom? Edom was their relative. So now we're talking about Esau and Yaakov, Jacob's children, two cousins. And they were not to fight against them. And so now this is where we are. And so let me give you this little parable that Yahweh gave me. In the serpents, I was cutting the grass, and most of you may remember this. And as I was cutting the grass, I saw a grasshopper jump in the way of the lawnmower. And I knew that if this grasshopper jumped, he would be cut to pieces because the blades were gone. It was too late for me to turn. And so when this grasshopper jumped directly in my pathway, I saw it as I rolled over the grasshopper, and then I looked back in my path that I've gone, and the grasshopper was still there. The grasshopper was large enough, and it was one of those bright green ones, so I couldn't miss him. And I saw he was still alive. And Yahweh showed me something right there. Just don't do what comes natural. So here we have the serpents. Sakoni, I'm going to bring it in right here. We have the serpents where? On the ground. We're being bitten. But Moshe put a brazen serpent of fire. That represent what Yahweh is going to do to Hasatan. He's going to fire him up, but in the right time. He's going to destroy him as well. He will be finally put in the place where he will be kept for 1,000 years. So he will be burned as well. But these serpents on the ground are biting us. And as these serpents bite us, what do? Look at the serpent that is on the pole and live. Just like that grasshopper, don't do what comes natural. What comes natural to a grasshopper is hop. When trouble comes, he hops. He tries to get out of the way. And some of them have wings like those green ones. They have wings that they will fly for a little distance. So their hop comes in to a fly. And so just don't do what comes natural. We were born in sin and shaped in iniquity. Just don't do what comes natural. So when we see the Messiah, just don't do what comes natural. What comes natural? Be careful. When they come with money and our flesh want to reap the reward, to be esteemed, just don't do what comes natural. So now, as I begin to go towards my close, we're going to look at Moab, Midian, the curse that was hoped to be placed on them, and the trust. Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many, and Moab was in dread because of the children of Israel. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, now this company is licking up all that is around us, as an ox licks up the grass of the field. Now Balak, son of Zippor, was sovereign of the Moabites at that time, and he sent messengers to Balaam, son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river in the land of the sons of his people, to call him, saying, see, a people has come from Mizraim. See, they have covered the surface of the land and settled next to me. And now, please come at once, curse this people for me, for they are too strong for me. It might be that I strike them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. So let's understand here. Actually, I need to go back there. All right, so we have a couple of things we need to address here. So Moab, who is Moab? Moab is the descendants of Lot, and we know the story of Lot and Abraham. So what puts Moab in this position? Lot was a righteous man, but he said, if you go to Abraham, he said, if you go to the right, I'll go to the left. You go to the left, I'll do what? Go to the right. But Lot was righteous. And we know this story that comes out of, several stories of Lot and his daughters. So, because of his trust, to believe is to trust. To believe on something, in something, on something, in someone. To trust. So here's the deep part of what I've been saying was really kind of deep out there. I'm going to give you an image of it. Belief is trust. If you believe something, you trust it. If you don't trust it, that means you don't believe in it. That's what James was telling us. He summarized that up very, very well. So we believe in Yahshuah, which means we trust him. So all the way back, what I want to show you is that unless you trust Yahweh, he has an issue with you. When trouble comes and you choose not to trust him, he has an issue with you. We see that going all the way back. When danger comes, you must what? Trust that he can save you. So danger comes as a test. And so we can see in this scenario that Lot did not fully trust, because he asked Yahweh, can you allow me to just escape to this city? He named the city. I can't make it to the place you want me to go to, but let me get to this place. So there was a certain degree of what? Distrust. And so when he did not trust 100%, his daughters were the outcome. They took him in the night, and he had seed born of his mistrust. And so now we see them in a fuller measure as they are now coming against who? Israel. The children, the chosen of Yahweh. So that's the trust factor. Moab. Midian. Who is Midian? Midian, they are also of the bloodline of Abraham. And so Moab, the king, is saying, come, curse them for me. So let's look at Numbers chapter 22, verse 3 through 6. And Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many, and Moab was in dread because of the children of Israel. And Moab said to the elders of Midian. So we have two cultures, two groups come together. Now this company is looking up all that is around us as an ox licks up the grass of the field. Now Balak, son of Zippor, was sovereign of the Moabites at that time. And he sent a messenger to Balaam, son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river in the land of the sons of the people, to call them, saying, see, a people has come from Mizraim. So there's something about going back to Mizraim to understand that there's somewhere along the path they got off track. See, they have covered the surface of the land and are settling next to me, and now please come, curse these people at once for me. They're too strong that I might strike them. So we have what? We have Moab, Midian, teaming up, coming together, and their remedy is to curse all of Israel, the people. So if you curse them, his resolution is, I may be able to defeat them and drive them out. So all I need you to do is curse them. So this is after 40 years of them being in the wilderness, right? And now they settled next to me. Come curse them for me, and then maybe I can defeat them. Look at the strategy. This is brilliant. He knew that he couldn't defeat them even after they've been cursed. But I'll settle for driving them out. So what did he do? Call for a prophet. He called for a prophet to curse them. And if this prophet curses them, it might be that I might go into battle and drive them out of the land. I can't beat them. They've defeated everyone they've come up against. But if you curse them, I can drive them out. So that was his plan, his ultimate plan. And so the ultimate plan is to get them to do what is wrong. What is wrong? To be disobedient to Yahweh. That's the key. I have a couple of slides, and we're going to go ahead and close out. Numbers 22, verse 11 through 12. Do not go, nor curse them. This is what Yahweh said. This is the instructions. So let's see how this plays out the first time Balaam asked this question. See, a people has come out from Mizraim and covered the surface of the land. Come now, curse them for me. It might be that I'm able to fight against them. See, this is the fight I want to do. And drive them out. And Elohim said to Balaam, do not go with them, and do not curse the people, for they are blessed. And Balaam rose in the morning and said to the heads of Balak, go back to your land, for Yahweh has refused to allow me to go with you. So he was good right here. Yahweh told him what to do the first time. Don't go, and don't curse them, because they are blessed. They are chosen. They are my people. This is the process that they're going through. But this brilliant plan of Balak is that if you curse them, then I can fight with them and possibly drive them out. I just need you to get them to do wrong, unrighteousness, disobey Yahweh. That's all I need you to do, is get them to disobey Yahweh. All right, so let's see. I think when I get to, well, we'll see. Numbers 22, verse 15 through 19. What did Balak do? He said, name your price. He sent back another crew, more esteemed than the first ones I sent. Now, with the first ones, they left with the price in their hand. This is it. This is what we're going to pay you, right? So that's the first time. But look what he did for the second time. Let's read. Then Balak again sent heads more numerous and more esteemed than they. And they came to Balaam and said to him, this is what Balak, son of Zippor, said. Do not be withheld from coming to me, please, for I esteem you very greatly. And whatever you say to me, I do. Name your price. Therefore, please come, curse this people for me. And Balaam answered and said to the servant Balak, said to the servants of Balak, though Balak were to give me his house filled with silver and gold, I am unable to go beyond the word of Yahweh, my Elohim, to do less or more. And now, please, you also stay here tonight and let me find out what more Yahweh said to me. Wait a minute. Yahweh told you the first time, do not go. Do not curse them. They are blessed. Yahweh spoke this. Now you want to come back to me again. Yahweh does not make a mistake. So, right here, he has spoken for the second time. You stay with me tonight, and let's see what Yahweh says. So he's going to Yahweh again. Verses 20 through 24. The narrow path. Let's look at the narrow path. And Elohim came to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men come to call you, rise and go with them. But only the word which I speak to you, that you do. And Balaam rose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the heads of Moab. But the displeasure of Elohim burned because he went. And the messenger of Yahweh stationed himself in the way as an adversary against him. And he was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. And the donkey saw the messenger of Yahweh standing in the way. Standing in the way. Hold on to that. With his drawn sword in his hand. And the donkey turned aside out of the way and went into the field. Turned aside out of the way and went into the field. The field. So Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back onto the way. Then the messenger of Yahweh stood in a narrow passage between the vineyards, and with a wall on this side and a wall on that side. So what is the narrow path? The narrow path is the way we're supposed to be, opposed to the wide path that leads to destruction. But the prophet saw what he desired, and what he desired was to be esteemed greatly by this king. And he said, name your price. So now he has my ear. But remember, I can't go beyond what Yahweh has spoken. So here's a little veering off the narrow path out into the field. The field is what? The open field. Let's look at verse 25 through 30. The donkey see and talks. And when the donkey saw the messenger of Yahweh, she pushed herself against the wall. Remember, there was 2 walls, one on this side, one on that side, and crushed Balaam's foot, and crushed against the wall, and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall, so that he struck her again. And so the first time he struck her is when she went into the field, and he wanted to turn her back, but she was off into the field now. And the messenger of Yahweh went further and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn aside, right or left. And when the donkey saw the messenger of Yahweh, she laid down under Balaam. So Balaam's displeasure burned, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then Yahweh opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, what have I done to you, that you have stricken me these 3 times? And Balaam said to the donkey, because you have mocked me, I wish there was a sword in my hand, for I would have killed you by now. And the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your donkey, on which you have ridden ever since I became yours to this day? Was I ever known to do so to you? And he said, no. So in reasoning with Balaam, the donkey began to speak. For our youth, our children, they may not understand this, but this is a spiritual matter, because it was Yahweh who opened the mouth of the donkey. So if you are wondering, well, how is it that a donkey can speak? Yahweh created the donkey as well, just like he created you and I. It is kind of possible that they had the language of communication before the original sin. Now, I'm going to leave that alone, but I just want to open that up as a thought. because Yahweh spoke to the animal kingdom and gave them their marching orders and told them, you will be afraid of man. So he gave them what they would eat. So this was during the time of divvying out what you shall eat. And gave them the fear of man and told them, you will eat that which is for you to eat. And for man, he told us what to eat. So that goes back into the clean and unclean. And then we have a whole teaching of which I'm not going to go into, which is now we know them as the flood of Noah, where he put two of clean, two of 7 pair of clean, and 2 of unclean. So there's a whole teaching on that. These are things that cultivate our young minds as we hear these good stories, as they tell us these Bible stories in their Sunday school for those who are on the wide road. But for those of us who are on the narrow path, we will correctly read them for them and give them true understanding, looking at the light and helping them to be nurtured as they grow. So when they get to the point of knowing, I want to be born again, I want this salvation, they've had enough culturing, they had enough of the process that they understand now that it's not all about the spiritual, where I feel the Spirit. But I need some belief to go along with that, and the belief is shown by what I do. My parents keep the Sabbath. That's what I must do. I'm too young to know to make a to choose something different. I'm still in my parents' house. So they keep the Sabbath, I keep the Sabbath. They're going through the process. They keep Sukkot, so I keep Sukkot. I'm going through the process. They eat correct, so I eat correct. Now comes respect your father and your mother. That's where that comes in, not before. Because what if your parents are on the wide road? If you know your parents, return to me and I return to you. I hope somebody is getting what I'm giving. You must be born again. Somebody say, you must be born again. And this is how we are born again, of belief. And of the beliefs, we must also have the physical along with the spiritual. And so we must understand in both parts that there is both physical and spiritual, and the two must become one. And so how do we go to the narrow path? Let's look. Verse 25 through 30. And when the donkey saw the messenger of Yahweh, she pushed herself against the wall and crushed the foot of Balaam. So, and I hope that I've already read through this whole thing. Did I read through already? I did. Okay, so I can pick out parts. So, who saw danger first? The donkey. The donkey is a beast of what? Burden. The beast of burden saw she needed to be saved first. And she reacted to what she saw. She turned and went into the field. And as she turned and went into the field, what was Balaam's reaction? He hit her with his rod. And as she turned and went into the field, she saw the messenger of Yahweh. And as she saw the messenger of Yahweh, he came closer. And as he came closer, she saw him again. And as she saw him, her desire was to be saved. Balaam is still blind. He's a prophet for hire. He's trying to lead them in a wide path or a way they're not supposed to go. So what did the beast of burden do? Went into the field, which is open field. But what did the messenger do? He came in closer. And there was walls on either side. And the beast of burden. Let me label our characters now. The donkey. We are the donkey. I'm going to put us in that place. We are the beast of burden. The messenger of Yahweh. That's Yahshuah. That's an easy one. He came in closer. And as he came in closer, there was no room for Balaam to escape, nor the donkey who was the beast of burden, who saw danger, who knew we need to be saved, both you and I. And if you don't care about your life, I care about my life, because right now he's neither friend nor foe. So our donkey, he both sees and he talks. And so he asked Balaam, why did you strike me these 3 times? Yahweh opened the mouth of the donkey. Isn't it strange, children? Do you think it's strange that a donkey can talk? I think it's strange too. But maybe that's a building block helping us to believe, because the Creator opened his mouth. So if I let that set in, maybe some years from now when I'm 10 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old, after I've read it so many times and heard it so many times, I'm building on that belief. And in that belief, I'm learning to trust. Because right now, I don't know that I'm interested in what my parents are interested. I'll let them deal with that being saved part. Well, I see them over in the wide road. The wide road, they look like they're on it. They look like they're about it. They out there shouting and speaking in tongue and that's the wide road, church. The wide road. But on the narrow path, we have a different instruction. And so, let's continue with that. So he said, because you mocked me, I have stricken you. I struck you these 3 times. And listen how this unreasoning beast is now talking to him. He said, am I not your donkey that you have ridden on? Yes. Have I ever gone on my own and have disappointed you? What was his answer? No. So first of all, Balaam, a human, a man, a prophet, is talking to a donkey, having a conversation with a donkey. So how is this possible? Yahweh opened the mouth of the donkey. Why? He first opened the eyes of the donkey to see the messenger that he didn't see. And then he opened the mouth of the donkey so that he can talk to Balaam. Let's take this further. And I know yes. Okay, I said 2 slides before, I was mistaken. These are my final 2. Verse 41, I wanted to get there, and I'm going to stop and conclude with part 1 of being born again here. Numbers 22, verse 31 through 35. We're going to look at friend or foe. This is what Balaam didn't see. The messenger who stood in the way, he's neither friend nor foe. He will take your head off. Why? Because you're being disobedient. Disobedience brings sin. Sin brings death. Let me say it the way James would say it. And I'll get this on the next one. But James would say, desire brings, he would use the word lust. Desire. So once desire has been fulfilled, it brings in sin. And once sin has been fulfilled, it brings in death. And that's the flesh part. That's the flesh part. So our flesh leads us to what? Desire. And so once desire has been fulfilled, it leads us to sin. And once to sin, to death. Okay, I see that there's agreement out there. Okay, let's continue. All right, so let's go ahead and close this out. Then Yahweh opened Balaam's eyes. So look at the process. He opened the eyes of the beast of burden first, the donkey. Now he's opening the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the messenger of Yahweh standing where? In the way, with his drawn sword in his hand, and he bowed his head and fell on his face. Wow. And the messenger of Yahweh said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? See, I have come out to stand against you, because your way is reckless before me. And the donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, I certainly would have killed you by now and let her live. And Balaam said to the messenger, now the conversation switches to the messenger whom he now sees. The messenger of Yahweh, I have sinned. Balaam said to the messenger of Yahweh, I have sinned, for I did not know you stood in the way against me. And now, if evil is in your eyes, let me turn back. And the messenger of Yahweh said to Balaam, go with the men, but only the words that I speak to you, that you speak. Balaam then went with the heads of Balak. So let's define this. Let's break this part down. Let's unpack. So Yahweh, he opens the eyes of Balaam, the prophet, of whom he said, go with them. But only after he told him, do not go with them. And a second time he asked, what more from Yahweh? I already told you. I gave you explicit instructions. Do not go with them, nor curse the people they are blessed. So the second time they upped the ante. They gave a price that he couldn't refuse. The first time, they left with the price in their hands. This is what the scripture says. They left with the price of divination in their hands, right? So that means they went with what, this is what we're offering to pay you. But the second time, he said, look, you name your price, and I will pay it. So now look where we are. And so now his eyes are open to the messenger. And Yahweh said, why did you, the messenger, let me keep them in their categories. Why did you strike your donkey, your beast of burden, these 3 times? Had she not seen me and turned aside, I would have destroyed you by now. Let me divide that donkey and what she saw, the prophet, the messenger, and what is now beginning to happen. I want to point this out as to where we are presently. I want to relate that this is what's happening now. There is something that the prophet Balaam says in my next teaching I'll just mention. I see him. This is in chapter 24. I'm not going to get there today. 22 is my last chapter, which I'm at the end of it now. I see him, but not now. I observe him, but not near. A king, a prince, comes out of Israel, out of Yaakov. So I see some nods of affirmation. We know, because this is our study for this week. So we'll be in this. So, all right, so as Yahshuah is talking to him, I'll stay with the messenger, but I want to ask this question. Who is this messenger, though? Now, I know I said it's Yahshuah, but going back to the top, and Yahweh opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the messenger of Yahweh. So who did Balaam see? The messenger of Yahweh. So now we really have to identify who is this messenger. We identified it as Yahshua, right? Because if we could see him, it's Yahshuah. But he was invisible to Balaam first. So if he was invisible, then really who was he? Yahweh. Yahweh, the invisible God. But I know I have to prove that a little bit. So here's part of the process for our children, because as they begin to, their thoughts are being cultured by what we do in the Torah. Never get tired of learning Torah. Dominique, never get tired of learning Torah. Why? Because we're still learning. Sakoni, in your 20s, we're still learning. In our 30s, 40s, we're still learning. We are the children of Israel. We're still in the process. So we never get finished learning. Never feel like you have arrived and you learned it all. So the look that Ephraim gave me is priceless when I tell you. That gave me so much confirmation. So as I continue, I would have certainly killed you by now. So there's some knowledge that is now growing, but remember, the donkey went off into the field, and Yahshuah came closer. And now this is being talked about by Balaam, who they haven't even got into the promised land yet. So this is about 1,500 years before Yahshuah is even here. And Balaam says what? I see him, but not yet. I have observed him, but not now, but not near. Can you see what this prophet for hire was saying? Even though he was now in the open field, laying under this donkey he done hit 3 times, By the time Yahweh has now opened his eyes, the messenger opened his eyes, and now he sees. So guess what? We who now see and have traveled the open field, have been in the wide road, we have now come back to what? The narrow path, of which is the reason he comes in closer, so that you stay on what? The narrow path, that there is no way of escape. You're becoming wise. See how I slipped the wise bride in there? You're becoming wise now because you are being told to stay on the narrow path. And it is the narrow path that we are safe. And we learn that we need to be saved. Why? Because we see danger. We are that beast of burden whose eyes become opened. I'll get more into this later on when I do the next teaching. But this is a Torah, so I'll give you that hint. Remember, Yahweh said, all that open the womb is mine, of beast and of man, but that of a donkey you ransom. There you go, my brother. You ransom it with what? A lamb. So there's something going on with that lamb. That donkey. That donkey's eyes were open. We are that donkey. We are, the eyes are beginning to open because, remember, he rides in on the beast of burden. And what is the beast of burden talking about? Behold the Lamb that takes away the sins of the world, right? So I'll get more into that later, but just so that you can stay with me, because we're in some deep water, but I'm trying to keep it surface, kind of swim on top so we don't, go too far. And what took place here? Once his eyes were opened, what did he do? He said, I have sinned. I didn't know you stood in the way against me. And this is what we're saying now that we're on the narrow path. We have sinned. We're no longer blaming the church and the enslavers for enslaving us, putting us on the enslavement ship or the slave ship, putting us in a nation where we would be ridiculed, killed, raped, and all of these things. Our eyes are becoming open so that we begin to understand that the trick worked. Because when you walk outside of the covenant promise, then he's against you. And that's the major part of Beor Peor, or Peor Beor. We join ourselves to Beor Peor. How? And this is later. I'll get to this later. They begin to take the women. This is what my wife will always tell you. When did Israel fall? Strange God, strange women. So I have to stand in agreement. Strange God, strange women. Because that is what led to the fall of Israel. And so as I close out, I will prove that as we understand our parts now in this and understand that Yahshua is coming closer. Now, if in the garden that was 4,000 years before he came, when he said to Hasatan, he will crush your head, but you will bruise his heel, that was the first mention of Yahshua coming. And then when later on, when Balaam speaks about, I see him, he saw him, the prophet. His eyes were open. We don't need any more proof. Yahweh said his eyes were opened, and he saw the messenger. But this messenger was invisible until Yahweh allowed his eyes to open. And so now that we are, there's something else he says. I'll get to this in the next teaching. A man whose eyes, what? Have become open, right? Right. So all those parts are there. So if the donkey didn't see me, I would have killed you by now. And so Yahweh is saying, if the beast of burden did not see him coming, he would have tore into this whole earth by now and destroyed the whole earth. But because of the wise, he's holding back the winds of destruction. Y'all know I just went into another book there, but I'm going to stay right here where I'm at. Do not allow the wind to blow until I have sealed my elect. Daniel, Revelation. All right, so, and I hope those of you who are out there on Zoom are able to follow as well. So here we are. What did he do? Balaam said, I have sinned. I didn't know. He what? Repented. And it was a sin of iniquity. Actually, unintentional sin. He said what? I didn't know. Our last slide for today. Let's look at this high place and just really seal all of that. Numbers 22, verse 36 through 41. The high place of Baal. So we should know that he is now with Balak. Let's see what Balak is going to do. And when Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to meet him at the city of Moab. And who is Moab? Moab is a descendant bloodline of Lot. Who is Lot? Lot is the father of Ammon, and the Moabites. And so they, and remember, as a righteous man, he said, you go to, he chose the best of the land. Abraham said, if you go to the right, I'll go to the left. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. He ends up in a city where he became, well known, one of the judges who left you as a judge over us. And then when the destruction time came for that place, he left, but he did not have enough trust. I'm using the word trust, but the word belief or the word be born again is actually on this same word, trust or belief, okay? He didn't have enough trust in Yahweh that he can get him to the place he needed to be before he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, right? All right, so let's look at this high place. He went out to meet him at the city of Moab, which is on the border of Arnon. And the border of Arnon, which was the extremity of the border, and Balak said to Balaam, did I not urgently send to you, calling for you? Why did you not come to me? Am I not able to esteem you? And Balaam said to Balak, see, I have come to you now, Am I at all able to say somewhat? The word that Elohim puts in my mouth, that I speak. And Balaam went with Balak, and they came to Keroth Hathroth. And Balak slaughtered cattle and sheep, and he sent some to Balaam and to the heads who were with him. And it came to be in the morning that Balak took Balaam and brought him up to the high places of Baal. Wow. And from there he saw the extremities of the camp. So he took him to the high place of Baal. Who is Baal? Baal is another deity, another god. These are the ancient gods, the Canaanites' gods, the different deities. He was passed around. And so now we see him as one of the gods of Balak, where he was taken. So what happens? We'll get to that later on, but they will build altars and offer up livestock on these altars to Baal. Can we give Yahweh a praise? Hallelujah! 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 Hallelujah!